random wind gusts today again, which is creating kind of, I guess, wacky weather. Cloudy in some places, sunny in others. I guess with that in mind, what's going on today? Perhaps this was a weather issue, but people are claiming with this picture that's been spreading online that this is apparently a crashed, unreleased DJI drone. Specifically, the claim is it's the Inspire 3. So you can see with these pictures here, there's a label and all that, and it does indeed look like it's a crashed drone. I wouldn't be surprised if DJI is working on an Inspire 3. It seems like they're more focused towards, I guess, higher-end enterprise drones in recent times. So is this an Inspire 3 coming? I know there's a lot of people looking towards, I guess, purchasing bigger drones, wanting more options, because for the most part, they have been more, I guess, consumer drones, portable ones for a lot of the new releases. So I guess there would be an option for the higher end ones for people looking for stuff like that, if this is true anyways. And I thought this was interesting, where apparently in Oregon they're debating whether or not to allow, I guess, drones inside the parks and all that. And it's always interesting reading stuff like this, because for people who are really against it, many times it's so contradicting in terms of saying you don't want this, yet you'll allow other things in life to be, I guess, used in the area. So I guess starting with this one, it says, virtually unknown before 2013, recreational drones have appeared across American airways and grown from a curiosity to a public nuisance of noise and a deadly threat to wildlife. Surveys indicate that drones disturb nesting oyster catchers 3 times weekly, leaving eggs cold and exposed to predators. One might think that our state parks, crown jewels of Oregon's natural heritage and highlights of our world-renowned coastline, would be spared the unnecessary buzz. But drones are virtually unregulated, and the Department of State Parks now proposes to officially allow them everywhere except where expressly prohibited. So they talk about things, for example, or this opinion on how they are noisy and all that, they could trespass anywhere, etc., etc. And then this part, they say drone operators represent a minuscule portion of people in the parks, yet drone use imposes enormous degradation. So it's something to keep in mind there, because reading other people's opinions, like this person here agrees with them, and it says, we go to our state parks for peace and beauty and nature, right? We go there to escape noise. I remember standing in the beautiful wide open spaces of Sub-Stewart State Park watching my dogs happily play in the dog run. It was a gorgeous day, blue skies and blissfully quiet. Then the loud buzzing whine of a drone shattered that glorious peace and scared my dogs to death. I was furious that some self-centered fool could do this. That person stole much needed tranquility, especially in these hard times from the rest of us. Do we need this in our parks? Seriously. So it got me to think, like there, I would imagine in that park, by the sounds of it, there's a place where you can bring the dogs, for example. But just in general, I mean, people bring pets and stuff to parks all the time. Could you use the same argument? Look, they're barking all the time. It's disrupting people's, I guess, peace and quiet. You could argue, hey, they run up to people sometimes. They're too excited. Now, the mass majority of people, they would be like, oh, it's cool, but couldn't you argue it there too? I'm terrified of dogs, get away. They bite people, it's happened and so forth, correct? Or at the same time, doesn't a pet, for example, poop around the place at times? You can say, well, I pick up after them, but do you actually clean the area completely? Make sure there's not even one speck of like feces left anywhere, like a smudge of it? I don't think so in most cases, but in general, it's more of, it's a public place. If people are being, quote, responsible with it, then why not? Because you end up contradicting yourself, in my opinion. If you're trying to use these types of arguments, how could you say like one noise is okay versus the other in that case? Can't I argue too, hey, it's a park, I want tranquility. I don't want to see you there, period. I just want myself to be there enjoying the whole area. I mean, does that sound right? No, it doesn't. If that's how you want it, then I've often said to people, then you pay the money, buy out the entire park or whatever. It's your own private property. You can do whatever the heck you want then. But if it's a public park, in my opinion, then you have to come up with ways where ultimately people could enjoy it as long as they're doing responsible things per se. Like if you want to complain about pictures and so forth, then you better ban, again, cameras with telephoto lens in general. They don't even have to be in the park. They could probably zoom in like, what, 100, 200 times and quote, spy on you and so forth. And with there, I would imagine there's already laws to deal with stuff like that. And to say that point to like the other guy wrote, where it's a small fraction of the population, for example, that use like a cool drone, so who cares about them in general? Again, I could argue about the same thing. I mean, when I'm walking around the park, it's technically the minority that has things like what, like a pet and so forth. But again, if people are doing it responsibly and all that, I don't see the issue. And it reminds me again, like in this case here, I've often said when it comes to things like drones and stuff like that, it's not even so much about being able to fly this here or there in terms of the big topic. It's ultimately like discrimination in my opinion. Like this guy is like, oh, who cares? It's a small percentage of the population of these people, whatever. I don't care. It doesn't deal with me, so as long as it takes away their rights, I could care less. In my opinion, again, it's just been consistent so far where anyone who's like that in general, in such a hard stance type of way, they end up sounding like the most, I don't know, prejudiced and discriminating types of people out there. And you could argue if they're okay for one cause. I ask the question again, are you anti-discrimination or are you just pro your own rights? That's what it sounds like here in my opinion. And the last thing I read was kind of interesting. It dealt with that story where Elon Musk purchased a large portion of Twitter in terms of like the shares, and people are wondering what's going on. Is the place going to be changed completely? Now initially apparently he was offered a position, I guess, on the board of Twitter, and he's not going to accept it. Like it says here, Elon Musk is not joining Twitter's board. Now this can happen. So what does that mean? It says here, Elon has decided not to join our board. Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal said in a new tweet, I sent a brief note to the company sharing with you all here. Now why he didn't actually join the board, it might be kind of interesting because according to this, if he joined the board, it says here, you see, when Musk took a 9.2% stake in Twitter a week ago, he agreed not to increase his stake to more than 14.9%. In exchange, he was given a seat on Twitter's board. That agreement is null and void as of today, opening the door for Musk to increase his stake in Twitter and put further the heat on Agrawal. That would arguably be positive for Twitter. Musk is also now able to flat out buy Twitter if he so chooses to spend his billions in that manner. That too would be a positive from a market standpoint. Make no mistake, Twitter in fact needs a shakeup, one that perhaps would be better driven by Musk being outside of the boardroom or as its private owner. So that's kind of fascinating with that stipulation before where it will give you, I guess, a seat on the board, you'll have a say and so forth, but you'll be restricted in terms of how much of the company you could own, because theoretically in that case you can't necessarily make changes, you're just someone on the table making, I guess, opinions, whereas in this case he could theoretically buy out the whole platform. So that's kind of interesting to think about. What do you think will happen there, huh? Would you think it's a good thing or a bad thing overall too? Oh, look there, for example, a dog scaring the wildlife. Should I say, for example, ban all pets and so forth now? You can see it was on a leash and stuff too. But again, it should just come down in general in terms of responsible sharing overall. Like there, you can't just use one example and say, ban them all, for example. Alright, see you guys later.